Okay? For sewing, to try and even it out and everything, this is the dial you're going to do. The only thing this is called a pre-tension. This is so that because the machine has an automatic knife, when the knife goes to fire to cut the thread, this tension cuff has to open. Otherwise it wouldn't have the strength to pull the thread and cut it. So this tension stays just the way it is when that happens, and that's the only thing that keeps your tension on the thread when you trim. So the tighter this is, the shorter the tail you're going to get sticking out of your needle after.
Okay.
If you make it too short, it'll pull out. Make it too long, nothing really happens other than you have more, either a longer tail hanging here or more balled up underneath, depending on what you have. This is your foot pressure. You loosen this white screw. If you screw it down, there's a spring in between here and the foot. It pushes down on the bar harder. It just gives you more. If you're doing like a fine leather or a soft leather, you want less, because the teeth on the feed dog, when they come up, will start marking your leather if it's too tight.
Okay.
Okay? This machine has what we call a tilt sensor.
Okay.
Anytime this is tilted back, an operator cannot make this machine function.
Okay.
Okay, because if somebody's working on it, you don't want them sewing their hand, accidentally hitting the pedal. I've done that on a machine before where I sewed right through my finger.
Oh.
It's not pleasant.
No.
So you will need to fill them with oil. Okay? And notice on those, you have all your oil in your pan. Well, we're not putting any oil in the pan on this. All the oil is going to be filled right through this plug.
Okay.
Okay? And basically you have a bobber. Okay? So as you fill this with oil, it's going to drain down into my reservoir. You can see how high you want it at most. There's your max line. But basically what you'll see is this little bobber float up in between the two lines. I like to say go 3/4 of the way up. Okay? Then you know you don't have too much in it off the bat, and then when you run it, maybe it drops down a little bit to halfway. You're still within the marks. You know, the machine's plenty safe. Okay? This machine will actually pump the oil through to the whole head.
Okay.
Okay, and whereas in like that older Juki that you have, any place that you see red paint, that's a spot that needs to be oiled daily. You need a little oil bottle, just 1 or 2 drops.
Do we have oil that came with this machine? Okay, because I'd like to see that oil. Okay. And so we're going to use that to fill it up.
It comes with a little squirter bottle too. Should have.
Well, since we need to fill it, let's go ahead and try to do that right now. So you're just going to fill up the squirter bottle and use the squirter bottle.
Do you have a garbage can I can pour this over? I don't want to make a mess. I mean, I don't care, but... See the oil running down?
So one of those bottles should be sufficient to bring it to its initial max level? Or?
You might have to fill a little bit more than one.
How often would you recommend they check the oil, or just watch the gauge when it gets low? Then
you will want to watch the gauge. One thing you may want to check once a week is rock this head back just to make sure that your bobber's not stuck. You know what I mean? It is a piece of plastic riding inside a piece of plastic, so sometimes they do stick.
Okay.
I did have a customer that filled them. He's like, man, I put the whole bottle of oil in. I'm like, you did what?
Oh.
The bobber never moved.
Is ours moving? I don't see it moving.
It will.
Okay.
if you notice, we're not even close to the max
I see the
line
max,
yet.
yeah, yeah.
We should have more of these donated, Jen. This is a good one.
I'll see what I can do.
Oh, please. I'm really falling in love.
There, so our...
You said around 3/4 of the way up, so
Right,
you
so
still
we would
wanna
need to
go-
add a little more than
Okay.
that bottom.
And by saying 3/4 of the way up, that is that at, it's
I'm talking
between the
just
lines?
the space between the lines.
Okay, so we would want it to come to about, say, here, maybe?
Yeah, I mean-
Okay.
I would have no problem with you running it right where it is.
Uh-huh.
It's a little less than halfway,
But
it's got
ideally,
plenty
we
of
should...
oil to cycle.
Got it.
You're just going to have to put a little more in sooner
Mhm.
if you don't feel it as much. So I'll put this one. Now, the other thing about the tilt sensor is that you see you have an error code up here.
Okay.
Anytime you see an E, that's an error code. That means something went wrong. And basically, when you rock this head back, this is my sensor.
Okay.
Okay. When it doesn't touch that table and push this switch in, it knows that it's not in the table, so it won't let you run.
Okay.
Even if I turn this off, I can trick it. If I hold this in, my normal screen came up. But, okay, and even if you rock it back down, it's not going to reset. You actually have to turn the machine off. See how it stayed E302 and it's down. You actually have to turn it off and turn it back on. Okay. Now on this machine, to adjust your feed dog, leave it on. Everything else that you need to learn on this machine is pretty much on this thing. All in here. Okay. Number one, we have a screw right here. Okay? That controls the amount of oil to your hook. This whole thing is considered your hook. This inner piece that will stay there, would you mind turning the hand wheel just a little bit over so they can see the different parts in it? Okay, notice how the outside is moving, but this piece and this are staying. That is called your basket. That is what your bobbin sits in. This is your bobbin case with your bobbin in it. Could be it. To get it out, you pull this little tab, and that will release it so you can pull it out of the machine. Also, when you put it in, it's very important that you have it in all the way. So they're designed so that you hear a click. Okay? If it's not, you can put that there and it looks like it's kind of in the right position. You start sewing like that and it comes out, you can end up breaking needles, all kinds of stuff. So we want that in there. This little screw here, it's held by this screw, and there's one in the back held by this screw right there. Those two, this and this, are eccentrics. When you loosen the screw that holds them, when you turn them, that's how you raise and lower the feed dog. But on this machine you have to do both. Otherwise your feed dog will sit. If you only raise one, The back end will be high, but the front end would still be low. Okay. That's really it for this one.
But it's factory adjusted currently to be level, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And this screw here lets you move it forward and back if by chance something jammed up in there, and then all of a sudden you put it back together and the needle doesn't line up with the hole. Or the feed dog, say, is not moving equidistant in the, what they call this here. This is a slide plate. This plate is called the throat plate. So theoretically, when the feed dog moves, there should be the same amount of distance to the front. So if this is my slot and my feed dog moves to here, and there's 10 millimeters between here and there, when it gets to the back,
Should have 10 millimeters.
it should
on
have
the
10
rear.
millimeters there. Should. They're not all 100% perfect, but that's a good reference point.
Okay.
And that's really it for this machine. There's nothing here that I think that you guys would be using on this panel as far as the, other than the speed. And I showed you how to get to that. Hold the I button, it'll go to 96, or if it doesn't go to 96, that's your speed. You know, it has a million options. You could set it up to see sensors, so the machine would sell automatic when it ran out of material. It would know to automatically fire the trimmer instead of continue to sew and stuff like that. You can change the speeds of the back tacks and other stuff, but there's really no need for any of that. You just control your main speed and then the operator handles it with her foot. The buttons on here, this button here stands for high walk. If I push this button, you should see the inside foot raise even higher. It's in case you were going over a seam.
Okay.
So it makes basically, they walk, you hit that button and then it goes instead of here.
Okay, so you have to actually be cognizant of when you're going over that other seam and make sure that you tap that right at the right time, right?
Yes and no. I can
Or you
sew
just
with it
kind of
up like
pause
that.
and...
You can stop and hit it,
Okay.
or you can hit it on the fly, or
Okay. If
and,
you're real
and if you
good.
left it up, it's not the end of the world, but you're
Okay.
making the machine do more work than it
Okay.
needs. You know, and that's, this also has to do with, like, if you had to go over a seam, say you're sewing 2-ply of something and then it comes together and there's actually 6-ply there. You might use that button to walk up over the top of it.
Oh, okay.
This is your walk dial. Watch the inside foot.
Yep.
Okay? Basically, this controls on how high they're going to step. So if you're sewing something thick, you need to set this to a higher number. If you're sewing something real thin, you can come back down here. Because all you want is that when your foot steps onto the material, the other one is then forced up. That's how a walking foot works. One is up, one is down. When the second one comes back down, forces the other one up. But you only want this foot, when it walks, you only want to see that this outside foot is coming up off your material. We don't need it to be
Yeah.
up there.
Unless you've got, you know,
seam.
several plies
Right.
of leather or something like that, and you need it to be there, but yeah, okay.
You know, that's only, this is pretty much for going over a seam.
Gotcha.
This is how you kind of control for your material.
Right, got it. And
Okay.
so in this instance, we just want it to rest comfortably on the surface, is that?
You
if
want
you
it to
were-
be up and off of the material.
Of the material.
If you're
Gotcha.
not off the material,
Yep.
alright, so you're, that wouldn't be too bad. It's
Yeah.
not too high.
No.
That's not too bad. If I went all the way down,
You're
what
gonna have a
happens is
problem.
your stitch length will change because your foot's not up off of it. If you watch this,
Yeah.
what happens is your inside foot comes down, your outside one goes up. Your inside foot and needle move with the feed dog and carry your material. When it gets to the back, the needle comes up and out. Your outside foot is down, your inside foot comes up and walks back to the front.
I gotcha.
So
So
if
if
one
it's
of them's not
jammed
coming
out-
up, then you're dragging your material through and you're not letting it move its full potential. Everything on this one is the same as the last one with your back tacks. In addition, we have a cancel back tack. Okay? It's a one-time button. If you push it, it lights up. At the time that it's supposed to do a back tack, it won't, and then the light will turn off. So, if I wanted to do a beginning and an end, if I wanted to cancel both, but I didn't want to play with this, I want to leave this just the way it is because I don't want the operator touching it, say. You hit this, as you start to sew, the green light's going to go off and it won't do the start back tack. But when you get to the end, it's going to do the back tack unless you push the button again. So if I go, let's do this. See, there was no back tack.
So it just overrides the back tack.
It overrides it. But if watch, I push it on once, so it won't do a back tack when I start. So you just went straight forward. Now, if I don't want to do end back tack, then I have to hit this button again and tell it to cancel that one. Otherwise, if I hit it now, if I were to heel all the way back, it's going to do C and D. We canceled A and B, but now it's still going to do C and D. So I can hit this and make it just trim. This button here is your needle up button. As you're sewing, almost all lock stitch machines are trained, or when you have a clutch motor you have no control, but on these they're trained to be needled down. That's so if I get to this point I can lift my foot if I only heel slightly back,